Hello, welcome to the March 5th, 2024 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to keep up with questions in real time can soon be eclipsed, so if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could refrain from repeating questions over and over again, that would be appreciated. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, which version number, if it's 11, 12, 13, and also which operating system, that information will be helpful. You should have an index of all the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. And if you wanted to search for topics from previous live streams, I think we're at 31,600 plus live streams since we kind of ramped up with COVID. You could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. We also have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better community experience, and we want to give a special thanks to them. We'll also give a special shout out to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource for the Steinberg community, kind of a collection of tutorials and articles that can help you with your productions. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia, in the United States. If you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And let's go ahead and begin with the questions. All right, Frankie Rock asks, hi Greg, is it possible to decrease the level of all my pre-gain channels in one go? Can I create a logical editor preset for that? Will allow me to do that in all my channels in one go. Many thanks. So I don't think it's available from a logical editor, but what we can do, if we open up our mixer, if we have a number of channels selected, and we can do this in the large mixer or the lower screen mixer here. So let's say I want to take all, or I'll just do I'm going to select these channels. We go to our large mixers so we can see this visually laid out for us. And then if you activate Q-Link or hold down Alt-Option plus Shift, if you go to the pre section here, because we're in Q-Link, I can just come over here and adjust my gain for all selected channels just like that. So we could do all, if you select all the channels, at that point we could increase or decrease gain on all the channels at the same value. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, Fadi asks, hi Greg, I'm facing an error while trying to export multitracks. Please change your naming scheme. I'm using Cubase Pro 13. Okay, so when we come over and we do an export audio mix down, you'll get that message if you're basically trying to name your audio files an audio file name that already exists. So to fix that, what you can do is change naming scheme. So once again, go to your file menu to export audio mix down. Click on the settings here, and this is where you could get the name schemes. So it could be that maybe you have the same naming scheme as a previous one, which will give the same results, and it's going to the same location. So you can get your messages when you do stuff like that, but you could just come right in here and change the name scheme. So if you wanted to have free text, and like, let's say it's today's date, you could just add these different naming schemes. So you probably want to make sure that your naming scheme is unique and that you're not naming the files the same exact way over and over again. So check just this little icon here, and then you'll see kind of the naming schemes. All right. See Robbie Bowling checking in from Dallas, Texas. Thanks for joining us. We have Taylor checking in from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania, from Music for World Peace Records. And Taylor's question is, if I drag a 4-bar groove to the quantize panel, then quantize 32 bars to that groove, is my quantize limited to those 4 bars, or will my 32 bars keep repeating the quantize groove every 4 bars? I think it repeats. Let's go ahead and take a look. I kind of set up a scenario here where we have MIDI notes that are kind of, we'll look at it in, let's say, our drum editor, and we can see that these notes are not necessarily perfectly on the grid. So I'm going to open up and let's come here to these notes. We'll look at this in the drum editor. These notes are perfectly on the grid here. So what I want to do is to take this event, we're going to drag it to make a quantize preset. Let's come over here. So this is 4 bars and this is 16 bars, all the same. So now when I come over here, we quantize this event, which is all perfectly straight with the groove from that event. I think it should do all of it. So now we hit quantize and we kind of dial in. We can see kind of the note groupings are kind of automatically applied across. So if we undo the quantize, we can see all the position. If we look at just the velocity representations or redo, so it will go back and do that 4-bar pattern across all of the selected measures in the selected part that you're quantizing. All right, great to see Jan from Stockholm from Cubase Index. Everyone give Jan a shout out for his wonderful website. All right, Roland Stuff asks, "Hi Greg, is it possible to select which drum kits parts appear in a drum editor and which don't? It'd be useful to just have the ones being used sitting close together when editing." All right, so if we add a particular drum, let's add a drum track here. All right, I'll just load up a kit. Okay. And I'm going to come over to my drum map. So I will go to my routing and we'll create the drum map from the instrument. All right, so is it possible to select which drum kits appear in the drum editor and which don't? It'd be really useful how the one's being used. Okay, so if I'm misunderstanding, so let's say if we have drum parts here, so let's say I now have drums on these events and I don't want to see all the drum lanes that don't have events. What we could do, I think if we just come over here, we could say show drum sounds with events. So if you see this icon here, so if you wanted to kind of see all of the different available notes and their drum parts, we could do that, but just clicking this icon here, we can now choose to show drum sounds that only have the events. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do, Roland Stuff. Okay, Dom CO Music asks, how does the remote control editor work? Can I save layouts? Can I save multiple? Am I able to transfer them to a second device? Are they saved inside track presets, and do they override existing ones? So they're not saved in track presets. So we go to our MIDI remote. So I could see kind of all of my different devices here. So let's say I have my Nano control here, and So we have our nano control. So here we can have basically a layout, and we could call this a MIDI remote script. And what we could do is we've basically made a software version of the physical knobs that are on the particular device. So we could now come over and see this. So if we wanted to come over here, once that's been done, you could download these scripts. If you go to scripts, we could choose to import scripts or export these scripts to other computers or to share with other individuals. Now, can we save layout? So what we could do, once we have kind of the physical control set, we could define what these physical controls do in what's called a mapping page. So for my Korg, you can see I have multiple mapping pages that are set up. So you may have your remote control may come with particular mapping pages. So we could do this, but if we go to the mapping assistant and we want to make a new mapping page, what we could do is click directly here, and we will say, I'll make this for Domcio Music. And once we've done that, we have all of the buttons here, and these buttons can be assigned to any function that we want. So if I physically press a button, I could come to the mapping assistant. So there's a couple ways to assign different functions. So say I want to take this fader and I want to control my control room volume. So what I could do is I could right click, we'll say pick up for MIDI remote mapping. I move the fader and then I could apply the mapping, and now this fader is automatically controlling that device. If I want this button to be record, again, I could press the button that I want to assign the parameter to. We could right click, we'll say pick up for MIDI remote, hit that button, and now that button is automatically assigned. We could also select different buttons here, and again, we could instantiate it just by hitting the particular button on the controller. And at this point, we could go through all the different functions, and I think there's over 2,200, 2,300 functions that you could assign to that particular button as well. So once you have a MIDI remote set up, you could switch between different mapping pages, and you could have a button that switches to particular mapping pages if you want. But this way, they could be freely shared. And one, you're not limited to the physical number of controls. You could just have a completely different set of controls when you go to the mapping and go to your mapping page directly here. So it's a pretty slick system. Patrick asks, what is the difference between the quick controls in the inspector and the quick controls at the top of an instrument plugin? Okay, so let me just add an instrument. Okay, so let's add, let's say, retro log. Okay, and if we click on the QC icon at the top, so what quick controls are is they're basically going to be 8 parameters that are kind of, we could think of them as the go-to parameters. So with version 12, we introduced the concept of focus quick controls. So when I go to a particular track and I have my quick controls set up, we can now map these quick controls to our different parameters. And now at the top, what we could do is from within the particular instrument, we could click on learn. I could select a quick control and I could move, let's say, this parameter, and this parameter is now assigned to quick control 3. So depending on the type of track that you're in, you know, this way, when I go to I select retro log, we come over here, we could see my particular levels that are set up here. So we see, you know, as soon as this plugin is open, that these quick controls are there. Now, this could also have like an impact when working, let's say if we have an audio track And we could have quick controls for the audio track. All right. So let's say I have quick controls for the audio track that's here. So now as soon as I open up the channel for this particular audio track, and one of the things that makes it unique with the focus quick controls is I could control my parameters here for the quick controls. But if I now go to a plugin, so let's say I go to under distortion, let's get to the VST bass amp. But let's say now that the bass amp is open and has the focus, I control my quick control here because this is the window of focus, will control the plugin. And if I have the focus on the channel, it controls the channel and not the plugin. So we don't have to sit there and remap all of the plugins and switch parameters. We could just, depending on what has the area of focus, the focus quick controls can control those particular parameters. So we could think of it at the top is defining which particular parameters are the 8 default quick controls. By default, it usually goes to the first 8 parameters of the plugin. And then, but we could also have channel settings as well. So at top, we define what the quick controls are. And then if you need to overwrite them or to have different plugin presets, you could do that here as well, just by kind of right clicking and going to presets, and you could choose your presets there. All right, great to see Uno Memento checking in from Finland. All right, we have Benny from Sweden. We have Erf B checking in from the Netherlands. Thanks for joining us. John Barry checking in from the English Riviera. Glad to see you back on. We have Peter Wild from Switzerland, Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas, Lawrence from Rhode Island, Barn Door Recording. All right, you see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin, just thanking myself, Jazz Dude, Jan, Agent K, and Benny, and all the great Cubase family. All right, so Domcio Music says, when loading VST instruments with custom remote control editor layout, the first page always corresponds to both track quick controls and VST quick controls, but changing one of them manually doesn't change the other. So, you know, with remote control, we have this concept of focus quick controls. So if I wanted to, again, come over here, let's go to this, and I want it to be for quick control 3, and let's come over here for quick control 4. I'll just remap mine here. Okay, so, you know, we could have focus quick controls, and as I just showed, those can go back and forth. Now, there are dedicated quick controls, because a lot of people, when working with virtual instruments, may have wanted to, while you're on the track, go to the track quick controls, while you're on the instrument or plug-in to go to those particular instrument controls. So for legacy purposes, when you go to your studio setup, you can still see your VST or your instrument or plug-in quick controls and track controls. So these are still there for legacy purposes, because a lot of people have set these up, and we don't want to negate that from Cubase 11 and earlier. But the focus quick controls can give you more flexibility in not having to toggle back and forth between those two. So many people would have one control surface and they would flip the controls on their control surface to switch between VST quick controls and track quick controls. And other people who, you know, now with version 12 and later, we could just assign focus quick controls and go back and forth with one single set of faders. All right, we have Matthias Hamburg checking in from Hamburg, Germany. Thanks for joining us today from the Steinberg hometown. All right, so I see Patrick's question about focus quick controls. I think we covered that. All right, John Costigan wants people to hit the like button to keep the live stream going. So Patrick just says, asks, can I save default to track quick controls and default to VST quick controls? I think that the VST, so as soon as you go to the VST, that these are, sorry, let me just get the right, that these are automatically saved. Once you set it in any session, those will automatically be recalled. So once you have those defined there with the track quick controls, you could at this point select, and I think if we, let's see if we save it as preset, maybe if we save it as default, but you could add it as a track preset. So let's see if we save preset. Sometimes if we save it as default, so it doesn't turn on, but I think if we, so we see the default settings there. But I think if we save it as a track preset, okay, and let's go ahead and add a track using the track preset. So once you save it as a track preset, then those particular quick controls are automatically saved. And you could also do that within templates, but a lot of people do. So, all right, so we see Soren checking in from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. All right, Dom CO Music asks, can I change the in and out puts of an existing script in MIDI remote? I would like to apply the existing map to a new MIDI device, identical device except for the MIDI port name. So I think all you would have to do, I think that the scripts are kind of saved here. But if you just click, I think if you just import, if you export the script and then import it, that when you go to import a particular script, and I don't think I have any scripts. Let's see if we could export this script. I'll save it to my desktop quickly. Yeah, let me just see if we could. But I think if you export it, I kind of did a factory script that you might be able to change the MIDI input and output ports, but you might have to export and import it. All right, we see Jan just giving thanks to Jazz Dude for the Cubase Nation Discord. All right, so we see from Domzio Music says, sorry, I meant the plug-in remote controls allow me to map plug-in features onto hardware devices. So, I think that, any of those could work, but let me know if that didn't make sense from discussions we've had in the meantime, probably from when you asked. Ronald Betts asks, what's the best MIDI keyboard for control in Cubase 11 Pro? So, it really depends on what functions you need. Do you need 88 weighted keys if you're like a traditional piano player? Do you need 49 keys, 61 keys? Do you need drum pads? So as long as most of them kind of transmit MIDI out, you can have a tremendous amount of control. In Cubase 11 doesn't have the MIDI remote, but 12 and 13 does, and that will have particular presets. So a lot of people like the native instrument keyboards are popular: Arturia, Akai, Novation. So they have particular keyboards that are already kind of pre-scripted for Cubase. So, but there's like how it feels to you could be but Cubase can. In 11 could deal with all those different keyboards using the generic remote and kind of the experience. Some of them may have like generic remote scripts, others may not, so you could check that on Cubase 11, but pretty much anything that transmits MIDI you'll be in good shape with Cubase. All right, Patrick asks, Cubase doesn't allow me to disable effect and group tracks. Can I at least set up a project logical editor preset that turns off all inserts on selected group tracks to save CPU? Yeah, so let's say if I am here, I'm just going to load up we'll create a group channel. All right, so let's say we have all these plugins on the particular track. So what you could do is come over, let's go to the project logical editor preset, and I think I may have made a preset for this already. Okay, so what we could do, we'll just kind of pull this up. So we're going to say the container type is equal to track and our selected track. And at this point, we will see under track operation, you'll see enable insert slot by number, and then you could just choose disable. So I did that for all 16 insert slots. I did this also for effects. So you could just come right over there. So now I have this group track selected with all these inserts. I click here, they're all disabled. So you can do it. So again, we want to, under our action, choose transform. We'll choose container type is equal to track. Property is set to is selected. Track operation. Enable insert slot by number. And we could choose to enable, disable, or toggle. So again, we could just come right over there and disable. So if I have these set to toggle, if I did the same command, it would just turn them back on. So you could do it with Project Logical Editor for group and effects channels. All right. think you could also do it on the larger mix console as well. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped. Just trying to find my spot where it was. Okay, so we see from rolling stuff. I found my spot. Thanks, Greg, being shown the show drum maps with events drop down in the drum router was exactly what I was after. Cheers from Roland in Sussex, England. And he's hit the like button as always. All right, Arif B asks, I tried to find a map where my macros are, but can't find it in Cubase 13 latest version. Question, how do I import macros, XML file in Cubase 13? So the macros are part of the key commands. So what you need to do is just go to, if you go to your presets and go to your, copy that file from your presets into the key commands here. Just move this down here. And then once you have that particular preset copied in, so on the Mac, I'll show you. So we go to Preferences. So we go to Library, to Preferences, and then we'll come over here to Cubase 13, and now we will see presets, and we could see the key commands folder, and then you could just drop it in there. And then when you go to the key commands, if you're on Windows, how to access it, I think I have a little picture. All right, so on the Windows platform, if you go to like your start menu and go to Steinberg Cubase 12, go to Cubase 12, you'll see a user settings data folder, and in there you'll see the presets, and you could just drop it in right into that folder. And once you have that file located there, you'll see it as your preset list here that you could import right there. All right. We see the artist known as Love saying hello to everyone. It's great to have you on from New York. All right, Patrick has a question. Is it possible to use the Project Logical editor to reorganize tracks in any way, moving to an existing folder, moving to top and bottom of a project? So I don't think that there's the logical editor. I haven't found any methods of moving it to folders. I could assign it to particular groups, but not move it into folders. And I haven't found a way of moving tracks to the top or bottom with it. either, so those still had to be done manually. I've kind of made a request already for that functionality to be included in future versions, so we'll see what happens. All right, the artist known as Love wants everyone to please hit the like button. All right, we see Timu Lampinen saying hi and welcome to the live stream. All right, DJ Mixes says Cubase 13 Pro user. In my opinion, Serum can only use WAV files as samples. Is it possible to use MP3 files as samples? Is there any other VST plugin that could be used as an MP3 sampler? So generally, you know, when you're doing samples, you know, as you're working with samples, you often need to edit and manipulate those sounds. So MP3s, you can't really edit. So if you wanted to do any editing of an MP3, like the raw data of the audio file, it has to be done as a WAV file, I believe. So that's why everything's going to be working with WAV files. And I could see, you know, if you were dealing with like a 1 gigabyte hard drive time frame, but you know, I think that storage is so inexpensive compared to, you know, what it used to be in years past, that it doesn't really make sense to, you know, have your audio truncated artificially for that. So I think it's best to always work with WAV files so that you can do edit, and that as you do the sampling, you can manipulate the actual audio file itself. All right, and DJ Mixes sending greetings from Switzerland. Thanks for joining on. All right, we have Braxel checking in from Texas. We see a hello from Asia. I can't read the letters. Sorry for my ignorance, but welcome to the live streams. All right, Peter Wild is, I guess, communicating with DJ Mixes, both from Switzerland, I think. All right, Domcio Music says I have Cubase 13 Pro and an i9 13900K processor, but don't have the optimization option for hybrid CPUs. Can it be enabled somewhere? So it can actually, it's done automatically. So if you have, you know, depending on what particular you know, processor you have, if it's kind of a hybrid processor with 13, it's just automatically enabled by default for customers. So it's something that changed right at the very end of the beta period, where it was just automatically set to be optimized for whatever processor you have. All right, the artist known as Love asks a question: what is the best way to uninstall Nuendo from Mac and reinstall with a fresh install? So you'll see like your so dragging the file to the hard disk could do that, and if you wanted a completely fresh install, you could come over here. Let's go to your Finder. So for some reason Mac OS is like really bad with uninstallers. So if you hold down the Alt or your Option key on Mac, we'll come over here to Library. So one of the things that you'll see is, so you'll see under Preferences, you'll see Nuendo 13. So if you want to lose all of your keyboard shortcuts and everything, you could get rid of all of your Cubase 13 preferences here. So when we go to, and one other area, if you go to Application Support, you'll probably see files for like under Steinberg. So these files can also, for content, can just simply, you know, if you wanted to completely throw those away, a lot of people leave the preferences and application support and do a fresh install Nuendo so that you don't necessarily have to rebuild all your keyboard shortcuts. But if you throw the program in the trash from Finder, from applications, if you want a total fresh new experience, you could just simply do those two things. Do those three things rather. right, so you see Patrick just says, hi Greg, I just figured out that the property is set to is selected plus name channel equals stereo out lets me make custom track selection and filter them by tracks that are routed to stereo out. So yeah, I think we showed that maybe on the last live stream. All right, wonderful to see Pertti Komenen from Finland joining us again. All right, Patrick asks, my first ever Cubase was Cubase 10.5. From there on out, both Cubase and Window take forever to load MediaBay preset files from the plugin interface. What could be the cause of it? Can I send you a video showing the problem? Yeah, please send a video. So one thing that, when I hear this a lot, it could be a preference that, if MediaBay hasn't been built, so if it hasn't fully built its database, so a lot of times people will have a preference. So if you get a preferences to MediaBay to scan folders only when MediaBay is open. That way, when you do that, it's always, every time you open it, it's scanning all of your presets and files. So make sure you don't have that preference. But yeah, please send a video if you want, share a video. And you can send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, we have Phil Baxley checking in from Croatia. Thanks for joining us today. And we have Cornell Hegedus sending greetings from the Netherlands. All right, Heartbreak Time Machine says, do channel presets work with group channels too? How can I save a group channel as a preset? I believe so. So let's say we have this as our group channel, and I'll just throw some EQ on, and let's throw on just a gate here. So we'll save this as a track preset. All right. Called Heartbreak Time Machine. Okay, so I'm going to add another group channel. All right, so there's no processing on this group. Let's go to MediaBay, go to user presets. All right, so here's the Heartbreak Time Machine. So I'm just going to drag this over, and it looks like it populated everything with our EQ and effects and plugins. So yeah, you could just, it's treated, since it is passing audio, it's just treated as a normal audio preset. So no problems there. All right, Phil Baxley asks a question. I find Cubase overwhelming for just simple ideas like a couple of loops and play with sounds. What workflow would you suggest? And maybe templates to get quickly started on electronic music. So I think, obviously Cubase can do, anything, just about any task you want, but you don't necessarily have to go there. So let's say I just wanted to, drop in some loops. So I'm going to just put this on maybe a 16 bar loop. So I'll come over here. So let's say I'll play. I want my tempo to be 108. I'll just turn this on. So I will come over here, just look for some loops. So let's say, okay, let's get to, so when I look at this, I can say, okay, I want drum, and then we can say beats. All right, so I have that. Now let me just come over here and say, okay, now I just want to drag that out. And I'll unmute it. And let's say I want that to start at measure 5. And if we wanted to kind of just put these into, and let's say now we'll come over, I'll hold down my Alt key. And let's say I just want to do bass, or it's fine with maybe like a synth part here. So and if these are all kind of, if I'm auditioning them, they're all going to be kind of placed into musical mode. So let's say now I want to add an instrument track. So we'll come over here, we'll add a retro log, and let's look for maybe like a bass sound. And if you wanted to put in like an arpeggiator, I could just kind of come over here. So I could just kind of hold a chord down. So if I wanted to just record, so we'll just come over here, I'll just played in time, we could, so, but it's very easy. So don't feel like you have to cover every single little thing. You build blocks, you could think of it as like little Lego pieces. I see this here, I want this over here. You want to make a copy, hold down the alter option. If you want to join parts together, if you wanted to move these around. So, treat it very simply, but realize that, whenever you want to get to the most advanced type of workflows, that Cubase will be there, but don't let it overwhelm you. Just kind of do one thing at a time, audition different loops, play through different instrument sounds, and just kind of hit record. You're not going to set off a nuclear bomb or anything. All right, Soren asks, Greg, I have a weird problem. Can you extract a MIDI from a vocal and then play that MIDI with Hallian Sonic piano sound for a minute for me? For me, the piano sound mutes after a while of playing. All right, so let's just open up project. Okay, so I will let's come over here to our inspector. So now we're going to go to our very audio editor. We'll have it do its analysis. All right, so I have kind of a Rhodes patch here. So now that I'm in very audio, so I didn't do any segment editing, but we'll extract MIDI and we'll do it to the first selected track.
And the sky turned magic blue, and I was falling before I knew.
So we see the MIDI that's extracted from the vocal.
All at once he kissed my face. The world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you feel good? Somebody wants to take you just the way you are. Don't it make you feel
And I'll try just to move down later in the project here.
Don't it make you feel good? Loves you someone, knowing that somebody loves you. Don't it make you feel good?
So it seems like that's kind of working as expected for me, Soren, but let me know if that is working differently than what you're doing. All right, great to see Michael Marshall from Somerset, UK. We have Jan in Copenhagen. Thanks for being on today. Okay, so we see just another comment from Soren on this topic. Says, Greg, I'm making a guided melody to my vocals and start with the vocals of me singing badly and then tweak the MIDI to guide me when singing properly second time around. So yeah, let me know if that's helpful for you, if that's behaving as you see on your end. Great to see Spot Dogs checking in from Canada. Great to see you on the live stream. All right, Patrick asks, hi Greg, I seem unable to copy inserts from one slot to another using Control-C, the described shortcut in the right-click menu. Am I doing something wrong? So let's come over here. Let's go to our mix console. All right, so if I have, let's say if I'm here and I have an insert. All right, so I think one is you could just hold down the Alt or Option key and copy. So let's say if I have this set to dotted 30-second notes and hold down the Alt or Option key and drag it to another, that those events are copied. So that's if you're doing kind of one particular event. So say if I have this slot selected, we could copy, right, so there's a couple different ways. So let's say if I have multiple tracks, multiple plugins here. All right, and then I think if we just drag this over from the bottom, that we could have all of the insert plugins. I think if we also just see if it's, so if I want, so that could be the entire channel settings, but if I just want to drag the inserts, I could do that as well. So let me know if those settings work for you. So we could copy kind of the individual settings. Let's say if I select the inserts, let's copy, come here and paste. So if you just right click on the top, copy, and then right click on the inserts, click on the inserts to make that the active, that you could paste as well. So copy and paste just like we did there. So those are a couple different options, Patrick, of doing it. All right, Patrick asks, is it possible to split the move and trim tools into two? Says I'm kind of used to the behavior from Pro Tools. So let's say if, so if you want, so let's say if we are here and we have this audio, so the split tool is We have this scissors tool for split, and then we could use the object selection for moving. If you hold down the Alt or Option key, you can split, but only if you hold down that particular modifier key, or you could just choose. So let me know if this is what you're running into, but you can, just split. Your scissors tool doesn't select events, and your object selection, unless you hold down the Alt or Option key, can split, but your selection tool will just kind of move the particular events. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding, or if you could explain it a little differently for me. All right, wonderful to see Matt Elston on. Glad you can make it. Loyal attendee. Heartbreak Time Machine says he smashed the like button. Question, is it possible to always have the cycle automatically follow the selected region? Playback always start from there. Again, something I picked up from Pro Tools. So if we are here, if you go to your start mode, so let's go to transport to start modes. We can say start from selection or cycle start. So if I have a selection here, when I hit play, it'll just play from that. I'll just go to maybe a different project here real quick. I'll revert this. So again, if we go to transport to start modes, we could have it based on cycle start or selection start. So if I click here, I click there, it starts playing right from there.
Someone's there to pick you.
If I have a range selected, so let's say if I'm here and we have the range, that if there's a range,
Someone's there to pick you up.
if no event is selected, it will go directly,
Someone's there.
and we can have it play from the range as well. So check out under transport, the different start modes, and I think you can get what you want right there. All right, Steve Green asks, hi Greg, after unmixing stems in SpectralLayers 10, how do I then import the individual stems to automatically line up to the original audio event? All right, so I had this kind of prepared already because you mailed a question in, which is always appreciated. All right, so let me just find... All right, so what I did is I just did an unmix of this particular file in SpectralLayers. So as we play now, sorry. All right, so I broke this down I unmixed it already, so you could now, if you're not familiar with this, we'll save some time. If we go to the extensions, we could load up SpectralLayers, and then within SpectralLayers, I went to Pros to Unmix, and I unmixed the song. So now as I'm unmixing this, and what I did here is I just dragged the vocals over. So if I wanted to take like my drums here, all I do is kind of just drag this over, and I'm going to just create an audio track here. And I'm just going to drag the drums over to this empty audio track. And now you can see that I have the vocals. So we have our guitar start. Sorry, let me just. So we have our guitar. My drums are automatically extracted here, so if we want to. So I just drag it right in, and then it's going to, I drag it to the same start point, and then that automatically takes the drums out of this file. This takes the vocals out of this file. So this file is now playing. It was updated to automatically lose those particular events. And while we're here, I know that you had sent a question that you couldn't apply, musical mode to these events. So these events are still basically, playing back through the ARA interface of SpectralLayers. So if you wanted to put these stems that have been dragged out and place them into musical mode to change the tempo, just simply come over here. And if you wanted to choose bounce selection, we could do that. And now that we've turned these into regular audio files that aren't playing back from through SpectralLayers, then we could apply musical mode for those. All right, so we have David from Paisley, Scotland saying hi to all. So thanks for joining us. All right, Balsa asks, hi Greg, is it possible to stop a track via MIDI track note asking for live gigs? I'm using generic remote start songs and move to next marker track, but would love to have them to stop by themselves. Okay, so if you want, let's say, so I don't think that you have to actually, so if you wanted to stop by itself, there is just a particular function. So I'll just do new. I'll just revert this here quickly. All right, I'll show you. So, but there is a function instead of maybe start. If you go to, I think you could say play until next marker into transport. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's say we're here. We have this selected. I'll just truncate that for demonstration purposes. So just like you assigned a key command for start and stop, we could do that, but let me just add marker track. All right, and we'll just, sorry about that. So let's say we'll just put an end marker. Okay, so let's say we want to put a marker there. So I think that if we go to the transport, that we could say like play to next marker and stop. We could just play until next marker. So if you have a marker here, so let's say, okay, will say play until next marker. So say we'll just start here. And then playback stop. So maybe instead of just having it do play, if you wanted it to stop automatically, so you don't necessarily have to send a note, you can send a note, but instead of play, if you assign that function in the MIDI remote, and again, it's under transport, play project, range, play until next marker, play until next marker, and then, so we will show you how to just set that up. So if we get to generic remote, so your function, so say, okay, you want that. Let's get to, let's see if it's under transport, device. Let's just do it from command, transport, then you'll see play until next marker. So you could just have your play command do that and stop if you just have a marker enabled for you. So let me know if that's helpful for you. It's great to see you on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. See, RFB says, thanks, Greg, that was useful. So I think it was with the copying over macros, key commands preset. All right, so we see Jan just says, hi, Greg, quick coloring question. Okay, so I see it coming up. We'll get to it in just a second. All right, so we see Heartbreak Time Machine just a comment says, oh, I looked in the wrong place for my presets. Thank you, they're all on MediaBay. So, okay, Jan's question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to color the tracks in the edit window horizontally so the whole track is colored behind the clips, just like in the mix view, where the whole track is colored vertically? Okay, let me just see if I understand this. Okay, so let's say if we're looking at this file here, so we can see that, all right, so you want to color tracks in the edit window horizontally so the whole track is colored behind the clips. So when I just assign a track color, so let's say if I hold down my Alter Option key and click here, and let's say I have this particular track selected, that now we can choose this. So the color, so tracks in the edit window horizontally so the whole track is colored. So let me know if that's, the whole track is colored here. And then, so we see the background, and when we want to invert that to show that it's selected, the waveforms will get selected. So it's colored just like the clips behind the mix view where the whole track is colored vertically. So let me know if, if you are using the colors or if I'm misunderstanding, but that seems to be coloring it horizontally. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding, and there's probably some other adjustments that you can make in preferences. So if we come over here to event display, we can say, okay, I want my waveform brightness. So if I want like white waveforms, kind of like early Sonic Solutions, we could also have, You know, if we wanted to change just a waveform outline intensity, you could adjust that as well. If we go to our event display here, we could also adjust our event opacity. So if we wanted to, let's say my event opacity, we could change that so that it's kind of, you know, the colors are just on the waveforms and you can see the grid underneath. So there's lots of great options for kind of changing the event display of the audio or of tracks from preferences, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding. Great to see Tiago checking in from Brazil. We see Phil Baxley just says thank you. We see Gary Ward from Zephyr Hills, Florida. Thanks for being online today. All right, always wonderful to see Gareth on from Spain. Thanks for joining us. Okay, Gary Ward asks, would you discuss the various ways to set up a template and a strategy for saving the files to a new project? I lost some files, stems, when I went to clean up the templates for a new track. Okay, so realize that if we are building a template, let's say I was building a template of, let me just open up a particular file here that's more templatable. Okay, so let's say I have like a rough Okay, so let's say I want to use this project as the basis for a template. And I just kind of sent this and added a couple tracks for John Costigan earlier today. Hope you got the file. So realize that when we're working with the template, that the template, we want that to ideally probably not have any audio files in the template. So right now, if I save this as a template and we go to look at every time that we would open the file, the template would open up these audio files from where they reside. And so we probably want to be able to open a template, and when we work with a template, not to have any media or audio files associated with it, but all the tracks, all the routing, all the plugins. So what I would do is, just come over to the project. If I was building a template to do this quickly and easily, I would just do a backup project. I would maybe select all of my files, just Control or Command A, hit delete. Let's come over to backup project. And I'm going to back up this project into a new folder. Okay, and then I'm going to choose that folder, and I'm going to minimize audio files, all right? And I'm going to remove unused files. And we see do not back up video, do not back up our mixdown file. So we'll just say, we'll call this template for Grace template. Okay. So now at this point, we have, as soon as we come over here, okay, so we are now in this file that's our For Grace template. When we go to our media, at this point, there's no files. Let me just get rid of those. So let's Might be frozen or something. Let me just... Okay, so now that I have, so I backed up the project just to get rid of the media, and now I'm going to save this as template, and I'll just call this For Grace, name of the project. Okay, so now I do a new project. I click here to More. We will choose For Grace. This is our template that we just made. And this is going to ask us where we want to store our audio, where we want our project that we're just starting from this template, where we want it to go. So I'll call this March 5th. Go hit open. It says, do you want to activate the project? We'll say yes. And now I will have the project loaded up with all of the tracks. We go to our pool window, just Control P or Command P, and I didn't empty the trash, but this way we're kind of starting our template with no file. So, think of not having a particular, we want our template ideally probably not to have any media in it. So if you just kind of clean out the media by doing a backup project, saving it without any of the media, that way it won't affect the previous projects and won't affect those. So give that a try, Gary. All right, always wonderful. Let me just clear my throat. Always great to see Razel checking in from Denmark. Thanks for joining us again. All right, Steve Green asks, hi Greg, a question. I created a new project. I imported an audio file set at bar 1. When I tempo detect, the tempo detect shifts the event to the right by 2.5 bars. What am I missing in this case? Okay, so we'll just start off the new project. Here, I'll create empty. All right, just get a file here real quick. We'll do. All right. All right, so I have this starting at bar 1. Okay, and let me do a tempo detection on it. So it looks like everything stayed the same when doing the tempo detection. So everything kind of starts at bar 1. The one thing that you may want to check, one is if you go to your project setup, which you could also access by hitting Shift plus the letter S, make sure you don't have any bar offsets here. And when you do the tempo detection, it's going to switch it probably from 4/4 time to 1/4, so that you could put in, like, if you have pickup notes to worry about. So if you want to set your, like, we have a drum pickup note, and at this point I could just come directly to, just set this to, and now we could just so, and then we could just see the tempo detection, but it doesn't seem to be. So check your meter to make sure that it's not kind of unexpected, but the position on my file didn't shift when doing that. But let me know if I did something differently than you did, Steve. All right, so we see question from AussieBoy64. How do you set the sliders on the Nano control to CC in the MIDI remote? So when you're utilizing the MIDI remote, you know, it's when we have our, you know, controller here, this is going to be transmitting MIDI CCs, and the MIDI remote is going to take those particular MIDI CCs and send those MIDI CCs to the particular function. So we used CCs, the MIDI CCs, as the language. Now, if we wanted to use these as normal MIDI CCs, what we would do is just come over and we would choose to disable the script. So now I'm going to come to the script. We could choose to disable the script, and if I come to my MIDI track now, instead of it outputting, taking the MIDI CCs from the device, what it's going to do now is when I go to my, I think if we go to our MIDI inserts, to our MIDI monitor, that now it's transmitting MIDI CCs. So we see this is CC1, CC0, and you could set these within the little applet for the Korg. So there's like a little utility. So now it's transmitting MIDI CCs. When I go to my scripts, and we will come over here to the Nano control and enable it. Now it's not transmitting those MIDI CCs, and it's taking the MIDI CCs to do control functionalities. So you could just disable script, and then it's going to be setting up the MIDI CCs, and I think that there's like a little editor that you can get. Let me just look, see if I think I have it downloaded. So once I have this open, I could choose what MIDI CCs it's actually transmitting. So then you could choose which particular CCs it's programming. But otherwise, basically, you know, once you have it configured as a MIDI remote, once you have a MIDI device configured as a remote, it's, you know, it's taking those CCs, but it's redirecting those CCs for control functions and not for control of functions. But if you wanted to just simply do that, go to your scripts, disable it, then it's transmitting the CCs. Then you could go right back to MIDI remote when you need to. All right, we see from Letitia Craddock. How did you get that channel tab open right now to access inserts? In 13, I have to go to my mixer. All right, so in 13, there's a couple different ways of accessing. So if we see our mixer here, I'll just go to a different project where we have some more channels. Okay, so if I have my mix console here, I could see my inserts right here. So I can see inserts and sends in the bottom lower zone. Or if we go to inserts on a particular channel, we could choose to, so let's come over here to, so when we see this, we can see my inserts. My inserts are always available in the inspector. 13 has added a secondary, like a channel inspector. So if this is turned on right here, we can see your inserts here and like EQs here and other Midi functions right there. So a couple different ways to access your inserts from the inspectors. Let me know if that's helpful for you, Letitia. And thanks for being on the live stream today. Let's see, Balsa says, thanks, Greg, for the play until next marker tip. So useful and effective for my case. Buying you a drink when you visit Montenegro. Always wanted to go there. So I used to travel constantly pre-COVID, but now I'm kind of homebound, which has been lovely and wonderful. But I miss going on little adventure trips, but hope to take my wife and son on future adventure trips. All right, Steve Green asks, Greg, I also tried to move the whole grid to match beats on an audio event, but it just seemed to move the tempo track. Can you show this again? Thanks. Okay, so let me see if we still... Okay, so let's say if I wanted to move kind of the grid, let me just make sure I have it right. Okay, I also tried to move the whole grid to match beats on an audio event, but just seemed to move the tempo track. All right, so to move the grid to the events here, so let's say I'm going to, if I was to do like a tempo detection manually, so I'll just kind of come here. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to turn my snap off, and we see like with this downbeat, I want that downbeat right to be basically, so we'll listen to our pickup. So if I wanted to manually do a tempo map, we would have to go to our warp tool, and we want to choose, there's 3 different warp modes. We want to choose warp grid. So now when I do this, we'll see that the transport turns orange, like the top numbers here. And I could just move the bar lines manually. So as we do this, so at this point, we could just move the bar lines, but make sure that you are not in free warp, because if you do free warp, we could choose to move different elements and kind of move the contents within the event. Or if we go to warp grid, now we can just manually line up each beat, each measure, each 16th note, kind of as you see fit. So make sure that you're in warp grid mode, and that should help you with that, Steve. See, kind words from Gareth is wonderful to hear. Greg, hope you're well, sir. I'm doing great. Just looking forward to some more hot mess tracks to play bass on. But I hope you are doing wonderful in Spain as well. All right. It's always wonderful to have you on the live stream. Heartbreak Time Machine says, always learned something super useful in each live stream. Benny says, hit the live button. All right, Steve Green says again, after unmixing stems and setting to musical mode, can I then double the speed, keeping the pitch in musical mode? So yes, but you would need to render the files first. So either do a either do a a render in place or a bounce selection, so that it's playing back just a normal audio file and it's not being processed through the ARA2 extension. See, someone is logged into his wife's YouTube account for Letitia Craddock. So now you're going to mess up our demographics for all of our YouTube stats. All right, but we're glad you're here. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely checking in from Martinez, California. All right, we have a question from inactive user. Hi, Greg. How can I move horizontal in the mixer view F3 for? It says always have to click on the lower bar and remove that. Is there a quicker way to move left and right in the view? Okay, so let me just open up different project again. Okay, so say we have F3 here. All right, so let me just close some of my. All right, I'm just going to add some additional channels, make the mixer a little larger for navigation purposes. Okay, so you see, how can I move horizontal in the mixer view F3 for, always have to click on the lower bar. Okay, so one of the things that you could do is, if you wanted to navigate horizontally, we could do that. We could also go directly to the top here and move if you have the overview. But one thing that a lot of people miss, including me, I learned this after kind of playing around with it, if you hover on a track in the meter area here, so my cursor's here, I could just use my scroll wheel to navigate left to right, like so. And you notice that it won't automatically, as we do this, it's not going to end up on a fader position. So just hover anywhere in the meter area and then use the mouse scroll wheel, and you could navigate between all of your channels pretty effectively without having to go down and grab this particular bar. So again, just navigate right there using your mouse scroll wheel. And even as the mix channels are updating, we notice that it never goes directly to a fader position, so that I don't inadvertently or accidentally move a fader as we do this. It'll always remain in the metering area. So let me know if that's helpful for you, inactive user. See, Jazz Dude says, well, I learned something new. That's good. I usually learn something new in every live stream, so it's always good, to do this. So we see Garrett says, woohoo. So I guess he likes that particular function. So yeah, it makes it much easier to kind of navigate in the mixer. You don't have to grab kind of like a big area. So all right, so I know we had some questions that were sent in. Let's navigate to some of those. We had a lot of questions mailed in this time. All right, so we had this question on the last live stream, and I had a brain cramp on it. So I wanted to kind of show the solution. And the question was how to reset all the clip gains on selected events. So while in, let's say if we look at this particular channel and we've adjusted our clip gains where we could see by the volume control here, and as we navigate, so we're at minus 407 on that segment, minus 10.48, minus 19, positive 5.56, etc. So we're 0, minus 10, 0, 2.58, minus 275. So we wanted to reset the clip gain for all these events to 0. So if we do that, what I'm going to do is to select all of the events. We're going to go to the volume line. I'm going to type in 0. I'm going to hold down the Control or Command key and then hit Enter. So hold down the Control Command key, and now all of the volume, all the clip gains are automatically reset. So again, we could, if you want to, shift double click, that will select all of the events on a particular track. Go to the volume in the info line, type in 0, hold down Control or Command, and then Enter, and all of them will now be reset to 0 dB. All right, we had a question, it was asked last time, why does adding a VST instrument make text look like it's Russian? And I did see some reports with this, but it was with, and a bunch of them seem to be using arcade by output, seemed to cause the problem. One other preference that you could check is when we go to there's, I think that there's a, I think also, let me just find this one. I think it's just a single, like a disabled GPU acceleration. Here. So you get a user interface on Mac OS. Also, you could try to disable that. But a lot of times it seemed, every report I saw was related to people had just installed arcade by output, I think. So it could be a plugin that causes that. All right, so question mailed in, 2 related questions. How to quick and easy transform note lengths. What I mean is that, let's say I have an event with 8 16th notes inside each bar like this, and I'll show an example of what they look like. So we have 8 16th notes kind of in a bar where we have kind of like a 16th note by 16th note rest, and it says how to transform them into 4 eighth notes, 2 quarter notes, 1 half note, and 16 32nd notes. So we'll show kind of how we could join these into different, like let's say I want to take this into turn the 16th notes into 8th notes. So to do that, we would just come over to Midi, and we want to basically fill the gaps. So we'll go to our Midi functions and choose legato. So now those 16th notes have all turned into 8th notes. And I've made some MIDI logical editor presets for, let's say, quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. So when we go to our user presets, Okay, so when we do whole notes, what I want to do is to delete notes that are outside of the very first beat. And then we put this into a macro. So I'll just show the macro here as well. So we'll go to the key commands. Okay, so we have this. So basically we want to say type is equal to note. And we're going to say we want to select, or we're going to delete all the notes that don't fall on the very first 16th note. So let's come over here to our macros. Okay, so, and then what I did is I processed this logical editor preset here, and then did a MIDI legato. So we're going to do this MIDI logical editor preset to delete those particular notes. And now when we do this, we run the macro. Now we turned that series of 16th notes followed by a 16th rest into whole notes. Now when we want to do this for half notes, we will come over and what we did on this part is we said we want to delete notes, and then we just kind of did it within these particular bar ranges. So we deleted notes. And now when we go to run our macro for half notes, again, we run this project logical editor preset followed by a MIDI legato. So all these notes, as we look at this, we can now run the macro, and then we turn them into 2 half notes. And if you wanted to kind of look at the settings, so we're just going to delete notes that fall on the second 16th note, the second 16th note of beat 1, the third 16th note. So we could just kind of, and I'm happy to share these as well. Maybe Jazdu could send an email and I'd be happy to share these. So now that's going to turn our 16th notes into half notes. And we also want to do this with quarter notes. So now we could say we're going to run, so we were selecting these notes here, and we're going to delete notes that fall into these beat categories, basically the ands and the offbeats of 16th notes. And now as we run this particular macro, all of these will be turned into quarter notes. So this way we could quickly just say I want these all to be whole notes, I want these all to be half notes, or I want these all to be quarter notes. And I think why this was is for like an orchestral instrument that did kind of orchestral, that changed articulations that were kind of based on, where you play a whole note and it would do kind of an ostinato pattern. Now, we also wanted to do kind of the opposite of this as well, where we take long notes and divide those long notes into shorter notes. So the second part of the question was how to take whole notes and to split them into groups of 16th notes, groups of 8th notes, quarter notes, half notes, etc. So let's blow this up here. And let me just all right, so we have quarter notes here, and I made macros for this, where basically what we want to do is to take our whole note and then split. So I'm going to come just right before the very beginning, and we want to split our whole notes into different rhythmic values. So we'll say, okay, let's do whole notes to quarter notes for 1 bar. So what I did is I went to edit, and we said grid type, use quantize. We want to do our quantize category. We're going to set that to quarter note. So basically we're changing our grid to follow quantize, and we're going to change that quantize to quarter note. And then we're going to nudge the cursor right, and that will nudge it right by a quarter note. And then we're going to split that cursor. We're going to nudge the cursor right again. And instead of having to do this for every quarter note, what we could do is just run this particular macro. And if I did it right, we can now see that each of these was split by quarter notes. So I could just do this, and that would do an entire bar. Now let's say I wanted to split it to eighth notes. So we'll say whole note split to eighth notes. So again, we want to set the edit to grid type to use quantize. We're going to change the quantize setting to 1/8, and we're going to move over, and we're going to do this 8 times so that we don't have to, so we can do kind of a full bar this way. So now we run the macro, we can see eighth notes. When we go to 16th notes, and again, we just use quantize, change it to 16th notes, and we just repeat that 16 times. So I'll run the macro, and now we've turned those into 16th notes. So if you want to take your particular, if you want to take shorter notes, turn them into longer notes, you could use the logical editor and then followed by the legato function as a macro, or just basically take your macro here in key commands and be able to set the value to quantize, move it over, split, move it over, split, move it over, split by different rhythmic intervals right there. And that was from Alexander from Ukraine. So thanks for sending in your question. All right, so we had a question, I think this is from Soren, about a kick drum that he wanted to do replacing on. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's say we had a recording of a kick drum. So we'll just listen to this recording here. And I think Soren wanted to take all these kick drums and replace them and use a punchier sample, but it was all kind of one long recording. So what's kind of like an effective way of doing this? So what I did is I just loaded a kick drum into a sampler track here. So I'm just gonna, so say I just want to use that and replace. So what I'm going to do is just to double click here. Now we could, and I think what Soren had tried was taking different files and doing a detect silence and splitting them up and then kind of matching MIDI to it. But I would take a different approach in that I would just double click, go into the sample editor to hit points, and I just made some adjustments to the threshold and to the intensity where we could find kind of the start of the kick drum notes. You will see just a little create tab. So if you do that, I will say let's create MIDI notes. And when we do that, I want to put these onto C3. I'm going to put on a fixed velocity. We could have it, just because the amplitude is kind of low here. But we could have it follow the dynamics if you wanted to, or go to a fixed velocity. Now when you're at a fixed velocity, I'm going to put it at C3 here. And we could do our length of 8th notes. So I have this track selected. So we're going to put on that track. So now when we listen to our sample and the audio recording at the same time. So we'll just have this play just a little bit. So if I select this and we just wanted to bring down so that way we could kind of just take an entire, like a badly or like a kick drum that maybe he's like, oh, the drummer just totally didn't get his act together and he has a really squeaky kick drum pedal. You could take the feel of their recording, again, go to the hit points in the sample editor, and I just adjusted the threshold and intensity up, and then we could find kind of all the hit points of what was happening. We could manually edit these if needed. But at that point, we could just come over here, go to create, and then we'll see the MIDI notes. And then I just put that on a sampler track. We could put it on any MIDI track, a groove agent, howling in track, so anything that you want to use as the basis for the sample. Hang on just 1 second, my son is home. Sorry about that. All right. Yeah, my son's school is canceled today because they have primary voting. So it's not like many fifth graders can vote, but they get it off school. All right. Our next question, Greg, can you please demonstrate the option of using an external carrier synth like PadShop or Retrolog with the Vocoder plugin in Cubase 13 in your upcoming live stream? Thank you. So yeah, let's take a look at that. So if you're not familiar with this, when we have a Vocoder plugin, often what's going to happen, let me just mute other tracks here. So, when we open up a Vocoder plugin, so I will just now come over here. So I have an audio file. So if I have an audio file, we could generally kind of run a Vocoder plugin. And so I'll look at this. So we're going to open up our Vocoder plugin, and this comes in Cubase 13. So, generally the Vocoder plugin has its own internal carrier. But if we wanted to send an audio track and use the engine of a synthesizer like Retrolog here as the carrier. So basically we're going to take an audio file and kind of feed it through the vocoder into Retrolog. What we could do is on our track that we want to affect, this is where we put the vocoder plugin. When we go to the instrument tracks, I just have some MIDI routed here. And on this, we're going to go to the routing for this particular track. And instead of sending it to the stereo out, we're going to send it to the sidechain input for the vocoder track. So now when we play this little snippet, I'm singing this phrase for Greg. So this file, so we're feeding this audio file through the vocoder. We set the MIDI here to external, and then once we do the side chaining, then we could change the sound in the actual instrument here. So that he can get what he needs accomplished with this program. This is a recording. So if we bypass this, you probably won't really hear anything. And so now that this is turned on, it's accomplished with this program. This is a recording. I'm singing this phrase for Greg so that he can get what he needs accomplished with this program. So once again, to set up like an internal VST plugin, we want to put the vocoder on like the audio track that we want to affect. We then, on that vocoder plugin, set the Midi to external, activate the sidechain. On the track, we're going to have some MIDI data here. And on this track, instead of sending it to the stereo output, send it to the sidechain input. And then we could use this instrument as the carrier for the vocoder from the modulator. So all right, another question mailed in. Is there a difference between saving an effects chain from the arranger window versus the mixing window? The save chain will have a different location in Mac Finder depending on where you saved the chain from. All right, so let's take a look at the chain here. Okay, so let's say I have a number of effects here, and I want to save this as an effects chain. So I'm going to right click, and let's say from our project window, I will right click here, we'll save it as an effects chain, and we could even just kind of do it right here. So save effects chain, we'll call this March 5th, 2024. So I think it's going to be the one in the same. We'll find out. Okay, now I will go into my mix console window. Let's select our effects chain track. We'll look at our inserts. And let's right click, and we'll save the effects chain preset here. So we'll say March 5th, 2024. So it looks like that preset is there already. So I'll hit OK. It'll ask you, the file exists. Do you want to make a unique name? So if we say make unique name, then both of them look like it's going to be in the same location. Let's go ahead and just take a look in MediaBay just to confirm. Okay, so we'll say effects chain presets and user. I'll rescan the disk here. We'll just see if these, let me see if I could find it in this MediaBay here. User presets, we'll get to effects chain. So we see that the March 5th, 2024 effects chain preset and the March 5th, 24-01, which is a unique name that was added, go into the same folder. So it looks like there's no difference. All right, so we see question, how to set up a toggle switch key command for switching between shuffle and cursor mode. So I guess shuffle and grid mode. So there isn't a toggle back and forth. We could have one button that will take you to grid or to shuffle mode. So say if we go to our MIDI remote here, let's go to our untitled. So let's say this button. Let me just reassign. So we'll just say shuffle. Snap type shuffle. All right. And let's just put this into grid. So since we have, 5 or 6 different so let's say we want to set this to grid here for this button. All right, so now so it's not one single button, but we could toggle back and forth. We could also choose the next grid type or previous grid type. So if I just want to come here, I could apply this mapping, and as I do this, all right, so here, yeah, so it's not going to be a toggleable thing, but what we could do is just switch between, grid and shuffle depending. Let me just check that. Okay. And this I want it to be set to shuffle, but there isn't a way to just toggle back and forth. Just come here to shuffle. I'll just so I have other assignments, but there isn't a way to just have one key that goes back and forth. You can go from grid to shuffle, and let me just look again for like another. I think we might be able to do another snap type. So we can say next snap type. So if we come here, we could assign this to our next snap type. So you could just come, if you wanted one button to toggle back and forth, but it's not to toggle between all of the different choices, you could do that with one single button, or you could just have a different button assigned for each particular snap type. All right, so we have a question. I'm using an MX Master 3 mouse, which has 2 scrolling wheels, one for the pointer finger and one for your thumb. I'd like to set up a shortcut to the thumb scroll wheel using hotkey option plus scrolling equals change waveform size. How do I set this up? So I don't have a Logitech mouse to really show that, but I think if you look at I think Best Korean Jesus, who's an attendee on the live streams, that he's done kind of an entire video on using kind of the Logitech mouse. So you may want to check that out as well. And maybe Jazz Dude, I know he's provided the link in previous live streams, so maybe you could look for that, and he'd be kind enough to post the link. All right, so question, is it possible to store room sound or ambience in a cache so that it could be inserted into a selected area? Use cases, audiobook production where I need to insert room tone in between spoken sentences. So one of the things that you could do if you have, let's say, room tone that's recorded. So a lot of people, so let's say we just have like a project where you have room tone recordings. So it's pretty typical for, sorry, let me just, let's see if I have it in my recent. So if we have a project, let me just, I think I have one here. Let me just, okay, so I just had a recording of like, different room tones. And what you could do is once you have a project open, and if you wanted to insert like particular room tones, if you go to your MediaBay, so let's say if I go to, or I'm sorry, to my pool window, we could export the pool. So if we come right here, we could say, okay, I want to take my audio files and let's export the pool. So I made a pool, and when we export the pool, we export it as a pool, and then we could open it as a library. So let's say if I want to come over here, we could now open library, and then we'll go to my room tones. We could select this, and now what this is a media pool that is independent of the project. So if we wanted to just drop in room tones, again, we could just go to this library file and drag and drop directly into the project. So that way you could always have kind of like go-to sound effects can always be available. Like, we have lots of customers that may have to, have like advertising tags like the Walmart sound or McDonald's sound. And they always have those available in a library. In that library, you can just drag and drop and have those particular files that are completely independent of the project pool window. And I know you had a question, and I kind of tweaked the macro about how to, another question was how to work with room tones. So like, and if we have, let me just find my project here. So let's say when we look at room tones here, okay, so let's say I have a dialogue track and a room tone track. Okay, so, and we're looking for kind of an easy way to take, let's say we have our room tones here, and we wanted to insert the room tone. Let's say we've done edits for timing, and we have spaces where we may have room tones that are underneath. So we just built, I was kind of working with this macro, and I think I have it down now, so we'll show this. So basically what we want to do is to take the room tone, put it over here, have all these files automatically switch back to the room tone instead of silence. And we wanted to do a crossfade between all of the dialogue tracks into the room tone. So to do this, we can make a macro, and I just did this with the room tone at the basically below the track. We could modify the macro if needed. So let me find the macro here. Okay, so the macro to do this effectively could be edit. We're going to select all on this track. We're going to nudge that event up. We're going to navigate up and then down. And then we're going to select all the events on this track. We're going to crossfade those events, and then we're going to select none. So if when I run this macro, it's going to move this content of the room tone underneath, and then automatically do crossfades between when there's no dialogue with the room tone. So if I did everything right, we'll run the macro. And let me just have that file there. Let me just get rid of that one file. Let me just revert this as well. so we'll go to our room tones here. Select this, run it. So right now you can see that now the room tones are underneath, and as we kind of zoom in, we can see that it's done a crossfade between all of the different sections for us. So again, just run that, and that was a way that you could kind of embed the room tones right in. All right, so we just see question. I cut an event in half to copy one part to a different section in my session. How can I repair, heal the previous made cut? All right, so let's say if I have my audio file here. So if we are, so let's say if I cut this, you know, so there's a couple of different ways of doing it. So one of the ways we could do is, like, let's say if I copy that range and then do I think it's Control or Command plus Shift plus X, and then we could just come over here and paste that will automatically, I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to when you say do a heal, you know, to repair, heal the previous made cut. So, but you could do that, and then if you have it on 0 crossings, so again, you could just copy, paste where you want, or even before doing that, just copy, Control or Command plus Shift plus X. That will kind of move the contents over and paste the audio file where you want. All right, another question. Is there a preference where the user can define scrolling speed in the arrangement window? I often scroll way too fast, even though I barely scroll my scroll wheel. A sensitivity setting for that behavior would be great. All right, so let's say if I'm just scrolling, like in my scroll wheel here. So I think if, like, you know, as we are scrolling horizontally or vertically, that if we go to the preferences, like especially if we're doing like wind speeds, let's say like I'm just here advancing, so I'm just hitting the plus sign or the minus sign on my numeric keypad of my keyboard. And now what we could do is, if we go to preferences, I think it's under transport, that you could adjust the wind speed. So we can say the speed factor. So if it's with wind speed, so now we could just come over here, and as we adjust this, we could have it move faster, or if you hold down the Shift key. So if I rewind, we can make that faster. If I hold down the Shift key, we could increase. Let me know if it's the wind speed that you're worried about, but that is user adjustable. So if we go again to preferences, to transport, we could just set the speed factor here and how fast of a ratio the wind speed is. Okay, we covered that one already. All right, so we had a question. This is from previous live stream. In a live stream of February 13th, I asked if it's possible to show only the Halion Sonic content in Halion Sonic and not the additional Halion 7 content. I guess it's not possible. What I really want is to have Cubase Pro configuration that only shows the default plugins, VSTIs, and content that comes with Cubase Pro, which does not show any additional third-party plugins, instruments, or content that I've installed. I would like to have this for training I provide. So I think if we wanted to come over and see just the content that comes with Cubase, if we go into your MediaBay, and let's go over here to the attributes. So let's say we go to our factory content or VST sound, and let me just activate all the different files here. So, but if you go to the plugin name, that here, I think if you just choose like the Halion Sonic SE, that is, I think that might be only the content that comes with it as opposed to Halion Sonic, or there's some that's for Halion 4. So try just to look at it for the plugin content here of Halion Sonic SE, and I think that will show you the included content. And you may have to, just for this attribute field, just come over here to plugin name. So I think if you do that, that would indicate the Halion Sonic SE content that's kind of unique and comes with the program. All right, let me jump back to our live questions. Thanks for sending in questions in advance. And again, you could send questions to clubcubase@steinberg.de. If you have, again, learned any tips or tricks that you like, make sure that you do hit the like button. And let me just jump back into our live questions. Thanks for sending all those questions in advance. Okay. Let me find where it dropped off. Okay, so I think I'm close. All right, inactive user asks, thanks, Greg. Is there a way to deactivate changing the fader position by using the scroll wheel? So currently we could do a lot of the parameters that we see. So, you know, when we deactivate the mouse scroll wheel, we could do this, but a lot of people really like using their mouse scroll wheel for this. If you did find that you accidentally moved the scroll wheel, you could always hit Alt or Option plus Z, and you do have an unlimited history within your, you know, if you go to your mix console history, let's say you accidentally move that, you can just hit Alt or Option plus Z, and then you could undo unwanted mixer moves. But now when we do this, like a lot of people would complain in previous versions that, you know, if I adjust the EQ here and then I move that, we could adjust the parameters, but now there's a preference. So if you go to preferences to mix console, just that you could scrolling disable mouse wheel for parameter change, but it still works for, you know, it doesn't disable the faders. For a lot of people, that's their, like for doing, you know, vocal rides, that's where they will do a lot of automation using their mouse wheel. Second part of the question, how can I color code my mixer view like yours where the color is everywhere, not just at the top bottom? Okay, so when we're looking at, we just add a number of tracks here. Okay, so now we can see our mixer, our tracks here are kind of laid out for us. We'll open up the mixer, and if we want to see kind of the mixer, like the colors throughout the channels, you go to preferences, to user interface, to track and mix console channel colors, and then you could just say you want not only the tracks but the mix console channel color. So without that turned on, it's kind of a matte black. When you enable that, you could do that, and you could adjust the intensity of that if you want as well. So if you want more intense or less intense, you could make those adjustments just like that. But again, preferences, to user interface, to track and mix console channel colors, and try just turning that on right there. All right. See, Gareth is happy with the revelation today. I think with the mouse, with the scrolling in the mix consoles, world peace will happen tomorrow. That'd be nice. All right, we have a question from Uno Memento. Is it possible to make a note from a bass audio track with pitch sliding, say C1 to C2? All right, so let me just go to a track here. Okay, so let's say if we have an audio track, you know, what I see some people will do, let's just say, all right, so I could come here and I'm going to just take this particular track. We'll go to the sampler control. If you need to kind of manipulate an audio file, we could drag that in and just like, okay, I wanted to play this particular file. So we'll say our root pitch is A3. And we could, if you want to just like where that particular event starts, we can say, okay, I want to, we'll draw in a MIDI note here. Let's extend this out. All right, so if we mute this, we could now just come over here, and what this is going to do is so we could have that MIDI kind of show at the same time, and then we could set like the pitch bend range in the sampler track. And let's set the pitch bend range to 12. So while it's playing, if we wanted to. So you can see that that file, that audio file isn't playing, but now I can manipulate it with my pitch bend wheel. So you could just do it kind of like that, and so it's a pretty fast way to do it. So you could just drop the file into the sampler track, start the MIDI note at the root pitch at the same, and then put your pitch bend to 12 semitones and have all sorts of fun. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Uno Memento. All right, we see from Soren says I have VST Live Pro now. It's version 1, right? So yes, it's the current version. I think much wanted is from, but none existing. Q-Link in the mixers, very much wanted by me in Android, not just Apple for the third party, right? So currently it's only for iOS, but you know they have been porting a lot of stuff to Android, so we'll see where it goes with that. And we see another question says, do you know if much is happening with VST Live Pro soon? So I know that they're, you know, feverishly working on new stuff. So, you know, seeing from when it was initially released to what it is now, there's lots of wonderful developments and changes. So I would anticipate it still being worked on and actively developed. And realize it's, you know, pretty much a brand new program. So All right, Neo Dungle Experience asks, "Hi Greg, can you please demonstrate how to process a mid-side EQ on Cubase 12?" Yeah, so let's take a look. We'll come over, we revert this to our previous version here. So I'll put a mid-side EQ on this total mix of this project. So if we go to our frequency EQ that has mid-side capabilities, so what we could do is we could find our particular band. So let's say we want to work with band 4. And right now we could have this work in stereo. So we could have that working in stereo, and that's going to control kind of all of the tracks. We could have this work in mid-side as well. So now if I wanted the sides, and we think of the sides here as, let's imagine this is left, center, right, just to visualize it. So when we go to our sides, I could boost or cut and EQ frequencies for just the sides, kind of the outer edges. So now if I come here, I'm only EQing the sides but leaving the mid-range, the middle part of the panning spectrum, the same. So now I could EQ the sides, make those brighter. Let's say the middle part, and I could have different. So if I click on, okay, the middle part, I could have independent Q. So now when I do this EQ, it's really only in the middle part of the panning spectrum. But we could have the highs boosted on the left and right edges. And now this EQ, where we see M, is only in the middle part of the panning spectrum, whereas this is going to be on the sides. So again, once you open up frequency, you could just kind of scroll through whether you want it to be mid-side, stereo, or left-right independent as well. So this way I could EQ only the right speaker and not EQ the left. For the left speaker, I want a lot of low end, but not in the right. So it's very, very powerful, flexible EQ. So it's a great way to kind of bring vocals up in the mix that might be a little too low. Okay, Balsa asks, "Hi Greg, is there an option in preferences to have the playhead jump to the start of a selected event?" So it's not in preferences, but it's actually a different transport mode. So I think if we go to transport, and it's maybe not so obviously named, but video follows editing on off. So now when I click on an event, the cursor jumps to the start of that particular event. When that is disabled from the transport, I could click and my playhead isn't affected by selecting events, but with the transport, with that option enabled, video follows editing. Now as soon as I select an event, the cursor jumps directly to the beginning of the selected event, like so. All right, wonderful to see Peter from Montreal. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you on. All right, so Neo Dungle Experience says, "Greetings all the way from Northeast India." So thanks for joining us from India. I realize it's probably the middle of the night there. We appreciate you being on the live stream today. All right, so we see day one just says, "I just purchased Cubase Pro and need to know how to use it from the ground up." So, you know, how I would start is, one, make sure everything is kind of set up as expected. If you have a MIDI controller, you should see, when you hit the keys, you should probably see MIDI activity here on the lower right hand side of the transport. So make sure if you have a MIDI keyboard that your MIDI is coming in and being recognized. We want to make sure your audio interface is configured. So we'll go to your studio menu to studio setup, and you may have seen when you first started Cubase for you to choose your particular audio interface. So we could come to the audio system and you would select your particular audio interface right there. So this is what you're going to use for Cubase, and this is often independent of what you access within the operating system. So if you have, like an audio interface that you use for listening to YouTube videos and one that you use for Cubase, that's totally fine. So we need to set this in Cubase. We need to, at this point, choose under our studio menu, you'll see input and output ports. It'll probably default to like a stereo in and a stereo out. So let's say I'll just use presets here. So I have stereo in, stereo out. When we want to add a track, we can see when we start a project, we could say you'll see different templates that you could start with, or you could just say you want to create empty. When you do this, it's going to ask you for a folder, and we could think of every song, every individual song goes into a unique folder. So if you just remember that from this setup, you'll be much better in the long term. So we want to define a unique folder. We'll hit open. We'll have a blank song. We could right click and say we want to add an audio track. When we do this, we say, okay, my microphone, my guitar, my keyboard is plugged into the audio input. Do you want to record audio, which is your voice, a guitar, a bass, a saxophone, audio from a piano, or do you want to record a MIDI going to play a MIDI instrument or a virtual instrument? So if we want to record audio, we can say, okay, I want to record a mono file of me singing. I want to use input 1 is where my microphone is connected. If I have a condenser mic, you may have to turn on phantom power on your audio interface. We'll come here. We want to make sure that we choose this track to record, and if we want to hear the recording through headphones that are connected to our audio interface or through the speakers, we click on the little speaker icon. We can now come over here, click record, and we'll record the audio source. I don't have anything connected currently into my system. If I wanted to record MIDI, we have lots of great virtual instruments. We could add an instrument track. You'll see lots of different sounds in the instrument called Howling and Sonic, which comes with it. We'll click here. We're going to add this particular instrument track. We can see our sounds. So what type of sound do we want? We can say, okay, maybe I want a piano sound. So we can see different categories here. So I want piano, and I wanted it to be an acoustic piano, and I want it to be, so we can see all these different categories here. So let's say, okay, maybe if I look in here, we can just say, okay, I wanted a jazz grand piano. So now, and if I wanted to record that, I could just play my MIDI keyboard, come over here, hit record, and you hit record, you rewind, play, stop, and you just keep adding more and more tracks. You'll have a mixer here where you can make stuff louder, softer. If you click on the edit channel, you can add EQ, different plugins, and then work on building your mix. So Cubase can do just about everything and more than you could ever imagine. But the beauty of Cubase is you could treat it very simply. You don't have to use all the advanced features. You don't have to use all of the capabilities that are a part of Cubase. All you have to do is figure out one little step at a time. Just like if you are a guitar player, you took piano lessons as a kid, you didn't play super advanced pieces when you first started off. You had to kind of get the basics down, And from there, you could build and add more songs, add more features, add more capabilities as you learn the program. So let us know as you go on. Go to cubaseindex.com, go to the Cubase Nation Discord, the cubaseindex.com. If you have a question, you could probably type it in. We've answered over 31,600 questions. You could go to these live streams that we do twice a week as well. So we do these, twice a week, and you can just come here and ask questions anytime you want. So, and welcome to the live stream, and we're happy to have you as a Cubase user. All right, wonderful to see Nick from Essex in the UK. All right, so Soren just says, thanks, Greg, for the kick replace help. Okay, so you see Jazz Dude just wrote an email about latest Project Logical Editor and MIDI Logical Editor presets. I'll send them after the live stream tonight. Thank you for distributing them. I'll send you also the latest index as a PDF file. If anyone else wants a list of all the topics that we've covered as a PDF file, please email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. I'd be happy to share that with everyone. And you can always go to cubaseindex.com as well from Jan. All right, you see Gareth says he needs this for all the growling and screaming that Pablo does while drumming. All right. All right, finally, you see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas has arrived. So we have 3/4 of the Hot Mess group here online. Glad to have Michael Teens. Always better when Michael is on. All right, so we see from G.O. Asks, Greg, is it possible to add to the fill MIDI gaps macro in order to delete the previous note? Context, the fill gaps macro mono and poly used in last week's stream. All right. So let me just say if we have just... Okay, so let me know, like you say you want to add to the fill gaps macro in order to delete the previous note. So let me think what we did I think a couple weeks ago, but let me just create a scenario here. So let's say we have all right, and this is where I think we had notes that were overlapping. And when we get in scenarios like this, and basically we could play one MIDI note at a time. So let me see if we could delete the previous note. So if we come here to MIDI, and I think if it said fill gaps, but let's say if we delete overlaps mono, that now this event. All right, let me just select so we have these notes overlapping here. We'll enlarge the part, sorry. And we have overlapping events here. Let me make this a little more clear. Okay, so let's see if I select. So now that we've done this, that note was automatically deleted. So, and we could see that if we enlarge the part, that those notes were deleted. So let me know if you want to have the first note deleted as part of like a macro. If you could specify that. It may take me a little while to see if I get my head around it if we're doing kind of multiple events like that, but I might be able to do a logical editor preset, but I may have to kind of tweak around with it. But let me know if I'm totally off or if this is kind of in the ballpark for what you want to do. And if you want to just delete the previous note, like the first note of a like if it's delete the first note when notes are repeated, something like that. If you could let me know that, that would be great. All right, we see Michael Teams has begun his ice cream distribution. Thank you for that. Okay, so Balsa asks, hi Greg, how to do comping and audio swapping in audio parts? I would love to use it for creating drum breaks and loops out of different audio samples. All right, so let's take a look. Let's do a new project. All right, let's find some different beats here. Okay, so let's say we just have a lot of different audio files that are put together here. So I'm going to take these, and I think if we just come here, let's get audio and say events to part. All right, so now we can open up the part editor. All right, so now that we have part editor, we can take these different components here. All right, so basically we can hear one event at a time. So we think of it kind of like that. Let me just see if I have another events. Let me just see if I have any of these that are overlap. Okay. Okay, so we have 4 different parts, and we want to kind of create the magic beat between these different parts. So I think that what we have to do is once we're here, so it's not like like the comping tool we can use to kind of manage, but I think what we want to do is say, okay, we want to hear, let's say the first beat of this. So we're going to mute and manually, I haven't done this in forever, so let me just, okay, so this is the event that we're hearing, so let me just, Okay, so we hear this part here. And I think what we want to do is, let's say, if we cut all of these, and there's usually like, I want to say there's like a move to front. I haven't done this in forever, sorry for my brain cramp. All right, so it looks like if we drag them to the top, like the top has the priority. So let me just, all right, we'll just kind of start from the beginning. So but I think like we can move it down to like a new lane here. Right, it takes us to the sample editor, but if we move this up, then we could move different parts. So I come here, say I want this part to play. Then I want this part to overlap. Then you could move it to the back, I think, by coming right over here. I'll see if I could play around with this and maybe have it dialed in for Friday's live stream, but that's kind of the premise. I'll see if I can remember and kind of refresh my memory on how to prioritize things. I usually use lanes in the comping tool, which I find really fast, but I'll get a better showing of that on Friday's live stream if you want to come back. All right, we see that Peter's got COVID around Super Bowl Sunday. Sorry to hear that, and we hope you're recovering well. It's great to have you back on. Okay, Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the like button. All right, so we see, thanks Jazz Dude for posting a link with for Best Screen Jesus is for his MX, his Logitech mouse configuration. All right, you see Gareth is not a fan of room tone, but rum tone. All right. Okay, Cornell says, guys, if you don't click the like button, he won't eat his pizza, and he doesn't want that. We don't want that. All right, great to see Terry Dean on. Thanks for making it today. All right, so we see Gerald Ely says, thanks, Greg. That kick sample you pulled from the MediaBay was just what I was looking for. So there's lots of great kick samples in there that come with the program. All right, so we see Steve Green says, hi, Greg. Where does MediaBay get its file content from? I still don't get Groove Agent 5. In the plugin menu, I get Groove Agent Common Content, Groove Agent 1, and Groove Agent SE, no Groove Agent 5. So they are kind of the same content. If you wanted to, approach it a different way, so let's say if I come over here to, I'll just get to my media, let's go home. So if you wanted to open it from Groove Agent 5, go to your right side MediaBay, go to VST Instruments. We'll come over to Groove Agent. So this is the full Groove Agent. Double click, and now you can see all of your Groove Agent kits right here. So now you double click, Groove Agent loads up, and it will load up that particular patch. So I find it personally faster to just go to the right zone MediaBay, but the content between Groove Agent SE and Groove Agent 5, except for one or two sets, are identical. So, but check, just again, coming over to, go to your VST Instruments, set your Groove Agent, double click, find your kit that you want, double click. There's all the kits within the presets within this, double click, and that will load it up for you without having to go into MediaBay, and all the drums and presets will all be loaded up for you, Steve. All right, so we see Soren asks, does render in place exist in Cubase Artist 13? Let's take a look. I'm not absolutely sure. I think it does. Let's see if we can find it on a Cubase comparison chart. All right, so yes, it is. We can go to render in place. It's in Artist 13. So yes, it does come in Cubase Artist 13. I never run the artist version, so I sometimes have to check. Sorry about that. All right, so we see inactive user. Just says thank you so much with a big heart. You're welcome. All right, so we see from the hearse, just says my guitar has way too much feedback using amp rack. So it could be also relation to your speakers, so if you're running it with monitor speakers, it could be your monitor speakers could be contributing to feedback. And if you're running, with headphones, let me know. But for the most part, it works really well. But, just like most things, if you're, have a pickup and you're facing speakers and you're monitoring your guitar amp, and then the guitar amp is picking up the sound from the speakers at the same time, that could cause unwanted feedback. All right, Ed Visner asks, question, how come Cubase starts recording when I hit the spacebar to play? I see the red record button come on, I turn it off on the track, but it turns on again when I hit play. What switch did I toggle? So you probably turned on punch in, which is the I key on your computer keyboard. So it's this icon right here, probably to the left of the transport. So now anytime that I hit play, so if punch in is turned on, you hit play, it'll just, punch in like from the locator, from the left locator. So you probably just need to hit the I key, and that will turn off punch in, and the O key right next to it will turn off on and off punch out. So make sure that punch in isn't enabled, and I think that will fix it for you, Ed. All right. All right, inactive user asks, I saw when you create new audio tracks, the already has a color scheme. How can I set it up like yours? Okay, so it's a preference. So let's come over here to preferences. And if we go to under preferences to user interface, track and mix console channels, on the auto track channel color mode, I have used previous track plus 1. So now if I add a number of audio tracks, they'll all be colorized, and the colors will just be incremented like that, so we could see kind of the color scale. So once again, go to preferences, to user interface, we'll say track or mix console channel colors, and usually it may be set to use default color, which is no color. You could use previous track color, or use the preview previous track color, or previous track color plus 1. That's why I do, so that I get different colors for different tracks. Okay, let me just... All right, so you see Terry Dean was like number 82. Thanks for being on. All right, we have Mihai Vasil. Great to see you on again. All right, you see Michael Teams is great, is happy to be on here with everyone. It's not the same if you're not here, Michael. So we're always wonderful to have you on. All right, we see Benny had to take off. All right, Michael Teams wants everyone to smash and dash the like button. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce from Grand Chapel Studios. Glad you can make it today. See Uno is taking off. He has to clean up his studio for his next client. Reading through comments. Okay, still reading through comments here. All right, so we see from Soren asks, Greg, do you know, I believe we were told earlier by Justin at WaveLab 12, can we move folders and rename as we please like we can in Cubase? Is there some criteria for doing it with WaveLab 12? So with WaveLab 12, I haven't played with this part of it much, but let's go ahead and open it up. But one of the things that's new is the ability to have a project folder. So before, like a lot of times people would do an entire project and files could be kind of scattered all around. So let's say if we wanted to so I think one of the things you could do now is actually just have a particular project folder that you have access to all that. So it could be very similar to how you have your Cubase project folders. So. All right. So we see GO says Greg and Midi macros select CCLS add notes to fill gaps monophonic. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Thanks for the clarification on that. Okay, so let's look at macros. Okay, so add note to fill gaps. Okay. Okay, so let me see if I remember. If this was for multiple events, let's see. Okay, so let me just see what happens if I... Okay, let me just see. So I have the macro, maybe Geo, if you could specify what to do, if you give me some more context. Okay, so you see more clarification here. How to delete the original notes or extract only the notes that were added to new MIDI track using the macro MIDI select. Okay, so let me see if this is... So it looks like these notes are just extended. So if I do this, I'm not sure if it's adding or just extending the particular notes. Maybe if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I could play around and maybe give some more context to the macro, or if you want to enter it in here. Sorry about my brain cramp on that. See, Michael Pierce is trying to... we see Jazz Dude mentioning about probably the old Army card that was a PCM CIA card. I had one for years I traveled with on the road. So with a very finicky cable to connect. So you can always remember PCM CIA as the people can't memorize computer industry acronyms. So we see Michael Pierce trying to get an external PCIe slot, and his computer would love to try to resurrect his power core card. Good luck with that. All right. I have 2 of them sitting in a computer. All right, so we have a question from inactive user. What is the black lightning button on the top left side in orange? And thanks for always helping us out. So it's always my pleasure to help. What that does is, like right now I have multiple projects open. So you could have multiple projects open, but one currently active project. So if you wanted to switch to a different project and activate that, you would now come over here. Now this is the active project, and if I wanted to go back to make this the project that's currently active, click right there, and then this activates that project. So when it's orange, that indicates that that is the currently active project, and other projects may be loaded but not active or taking up resources or computer memory. Right, reading through comments. Okay, so we see Michael Pierce also jumped in and explained the inactive projects. Michael Pierce just says he missed that little beauty. He got it for steel just as they went out of fashion, technologically viability. So that's what the power core. Yeah, so I had a friend that was kind of the project manager for that. A dear friend of mine I've known for 32 years. He used to work at Steinberg, so he got me some great pricing on him. And yeah, it's kind of a shame that it's no longer really viable. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's more questions coming in. Thanks for all the great questions. And again, if you want, I'll check out the macro. Maybe if you, Geo, if you have, like, give me a use case for the macro to see. So I'm not sure if it's just creating new notes or if it's, I'll just try the macro on single notes and see if it creates new notes, or if it's just, I'll have to look at Jan's CubaseIndex.com and review the macro. But let me just take a look at it one more time since we have a little bit. So I think it's trying to, not sure if I have to select multiple. So I guess it would maybe write a new MIDI note between the events if that's the intention of it. Let me just, it just looks like it's doing legato. But yeah, maybe if you want to email me with some more information, I'd be happy to kind of play around with it and show it for Friday's live stream. All right, so we see a question from Terry Dean. So we just see It says, is Steinberg developing AI models to help us make music? So it's kind of a, after the NAMM show, I did some visits with the Cubase project manager and our global PR manager in Los Angeles to different composers and producers. And so, there's a lot of discussion of what AI is useful, what isn't, so we can see some of the AI functionality already inside of SpectralLayers. We see some of the functionality with some of the new plugins for Nuendo, for like the voice extractor, and tonal match is employing AI. So there's a lot of stuff like that, but I'm not sure if it's going to say, write me a erasure type song in 2025. But everyone has, so we had a lot of discussion on what people expect or want or actually need from AI versus, there's a lot of tools that are kind of generating songs, and then the companies that came up with those tools own the copyrights. So is that good or bad, if you can't actually monetize something from it? All right. So I just see from the VU Emmanuel Ion, can you explain what all buttons do near the cursor? So let me know like which buttons you're referring to, and I may move the cursor in between. But if you just let me know, like at the top or down here, what buttons you're referring to, I'd be happy to do that. I probably move the cursor a lot. I know some people complain about that. I move the cursor too much during live streams. All right, so we see Terry Dean says stuff like voice recognition inside a sample. So, I'll show you a couple things, like a couple AI things that's kind of a little Nuendo specific that have come out. Obviously we could see stuff within SpectralLayers, such as, doing the separation like we're used to doing. But if we have like one of the things I think is really pretty remarkable is like, especially if you're doing like post-production, let's say we have
and then in fact we're northeast of Springfield City Center,
like a lot of wind noise. So some of the functions that we could do inside of that are included with Nuendo 13 that aren't in Cubase is we could now just come here, and as we play this, we could just isolate the dialogue.
The National Weather Service confirmed a tornado did touch down here, and they have about 8 to 9 or more.
Or if you wanted to just have it automatically, just have the wind noise.
Here's just one of the houses that we came
So you could just kind of separate those two.
Their garage kind of fell in there, and then this house almost completely gone. Right, so the walls are missing, and so you're looking like at the first floor, upper level of the home.
And then if you wanted to do something like a tonal match, so this is just a recording like that I just did just to test some different USB mics, but if we come over to our offline processing, so we'll go to our direct offline processing here. I'll take this particular track and we'll just do a tonal match. So I'll play this particular file.
Cubase at steinberg.de, or by simply typing your questions in the chat field. Today we will be listening.
So I want to use this as my sound reference, but let's say I have this file which is on a different microphone, like if you're matching lavalier to, an ADR session, we can now come over and let's just run a tonal match plugin again on this. So when we,
or by simply typing
we
your
undo
question
this
in the chat field. Today we will be listening to 3 different USB microphones.
So this is kind of
AG01,
the original versus
advance by sending an email to stream before. You can ask questions in advance by sending an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de
So
or by
we could
simply
now
typing your question in the chat field. Today we will be listening to 3 different USB microphones: the Yamaha AG01, the Rode NT USB,
so
and the Shure
kind of very
MP7.
nasally sounding.
Listening to 3 different USB microphones: the Yamaha AG01.
So we could
Cubase
match
at
the
Steinberg.de.
tonal characteristics
Listening
between
to 3 different USB
the original
microphones: the Yamaha
source.
AG01, the one. If you have not attended a live
And
stream,
we want to make
listening
this
3
file sound
different
like that.
USB microphones: the Yamaha AG01, the Rode NT, or by simply typing your question.
So that's using a lot of AI stuff under the hood. It's doing some pretty magical things for that. So like where AI makes sense for doing a lot of different functionality, we could just utilize that for like really good stuff. But I think having it write a song for you automatically isn't the most exciting thing. We could just listen to music as well. All right, so we have a question. Hi, just a quick question from a newbie. How do I connect my USB microphone, Shure MV88, to Cubase 13 Pro? I looked all over for a solution, even from ChatGPT, but no luck so far. So I'm not sure if you're running on Mac or Windows, but once you come over here, we go to your studio setup, come over to your audio system, and just select your Shure driver here. Now, if you're running on Windows, if you don't have a dedicated driver, you may choose like the generic low latency driver. And then once you come over here, you would go to the control panel, and then you could choose your Shure microphone directly there. But if you have the ASIO driver on Windows, or if you're on Mac, the core audio driver should automatically be recognized. See if you have an ASIO driver. If not, you'd use a generic low latency. Go here to the control panel, and you have several different devices like your built-in audio, maybe your HDMI output that could be utilized with a generic low latency driver, and then you could just simply choose your Shure microphone there. Okay. So we see Michael Teams just says, wow, that works great. So all right, so you see Michael Pierce just says, did a film in Ukrainian a few weeks ago. Well, finished it. Could have done with that. Spent hours in RX and SpectralLayers fixing stuff, and got Adobe AI to dream new words. So, yeah. And Michael Pierce says, still wouldn't have understood it. All right, so we see from Kevin Mehmed, great to see you on the live stream. And he just asked, can you show how to make and load your own presets in Helix Native with unique names? I'd asked before that you be allowed to have a license for Helix Native Windows. So I'd never heard back from Line 6, so I don't have a copy of it. I'll try to reach out again. Some of my contacts over there aren't there anymore, but I'll see if I get it. But I still don't have a license of Helix Native on my work computer, Kevin. Sorry, but I'm sure someone at Line 6 could probably answer you with that. All right, so we see from Liviu Emmanuel Ion says at the top row in the middle, just under the name project here, there are a bunch of buttons, a cursor, a pencil, etc. Okay, so these are just some of the basic tools that you'll get with Cubase. So let me just go to a different project, and we'll go through each of the tools and some of their functions. All right, so these are really kind of a cornerstone of how you could work with Cubase. So let me just we'll make this file here really large. So if I want to move events, I could grab the object selection tool. Let me see if this is locked for some reason. Just revert. Let's just see if I have this locked now. Oh, sorry, I'm in shuffle mode. All right, so if we want to move the events, we have the object selection tool. This will also allow us to do like a fade in. We could also truncate the parts by grabbing the lower end. And if we wanted to make copies, we could come over here to the right-hand side and just kind of drag it across. We have a range selection tool as the next tool. So this will allow us to take this particular range and cut it without having to use scissors tool. Or if we want to take this range and hit Control D to duplicate, we could just make quick copies. Or if we want, next tool we have is our eraser tool. So if we want to erase particular events, just like we would with a pencil, we could erase those. We could undo. We could also split events with the scissors tool. So as we split, if we wanted to mute, which is the next tool, the X tool, we could come over here and mute tools. We also have a glue tool. So let's say if I have a bunch of parts that are cut here, we could choose to glue these events together. So if I just grab my glue gun, we can now make these all, instead of having multiple events, we can move one event where they're all glued together. So we saw our X tool to mute. So if we don't want to hear something, we click on the X tool, it kind of turns gray. We also have our zoom tool. So if I want to zoom in here, we could double click. If I hold down Control or Command, we could zoom vertically and horizontally. So if I want to see what's going on right there, we could just kind of zoom in. We have this tools for comping. So if we have like a bunch of vocal takes, we could compile those together. We have warping, which would allow us to kind of move the musical grid if we wanted to, or if we do free warping. At this point, we could zoom in here so we can see this a little more. So we could change kind of the rhythmic timing of different elements. So if this part was a little early or a little late, we could just move it in time. And we'll also have kind of a line tool. So if I wanted to draw in different automation that was straight or with different shapes here, like sine wave, square wave, I could play. I have a play tool, so we can audition different stuff. The play tool has an alternate mode called scrub. So I could scrub the audio, and then a paint tool to colorize. Let me see, my son needs something. Hang on 1 second. All right, I'm back. All right, sorry about that. So those are a quick overview of what the different tools can do. So, and once you get the hang of them, you know, it's very powerful to switch between all the different tools for your editing tasks. And you could also just right mouse click to have access to the tools as well. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so we see from Soren, Greg, when I switch my mono Vox to a stereo track for reverb and delay, I seem to notice some lisping, like sounds, or more sibilance, sort of. Is it just me? Is that normal? Can something be done about that? So it could be that, you know, I don't think it's anything that's being done, but let's go ahead and take a look. We will jump over Okay, so let's open up where we have a mono track here, mono vocal track, and I'll bypass the reverb on the vocal.
Not a sound. Tell me why something's wrong. We can't go on.
All right, so let's say,
Living a
all right, so, and this is in 13 introduced this mono stereo switch. So,
How can I dare
so if I put in an insert of a reverb,
not a sound.
excuse me, and this is on a mono track, we'll come over here, so let's add a revelation.
We can't go on living a lie.
All right, so now I can just bring that mix down. So I'm going to switch it to stereo.
How can I feel you? How can I see you when you
So we go to mono. So the effect now is running in mono.
from the light?
And now when I click here, the effect is going to be running in stereo.
Be someone tonight.
So I did.
You're running high from the light. Be someone tonight.
So I don't notice any added sibilances. I mean, it does sound different when you're running the stereo reverb as an insert versus the mono. So maybe it's just kind of, you know, it can be a drastic change depending upon the plugin, but it didn't seem to add any sibilances that way. So let me know if yours sounds different. See, Michael Pierce says Nuendo 13 looks like a tempting upgrade though. So think how much time you get to save on that project for the Ukrainian film. All right. Okay, just reading through comments. All right, so Rodrigue Daasi asks, how do I activate pan mode? Because I was working on an audio track and suddenly I noticed it says pan off and it's not able to pan left and right on his track while in the same project. Other audio tracks have pan functions active, so I want to ask how to activate it if it's marked off. Thanks in advance. So generally this could happen if it's being sent to, I'll do a new project here. Okay, so let's say we have an audio track and we add our track and we have the pan mode here. So it's probably going to be sent maybe to a group track. So let's say if we send it to a group channel and the group channel is mono. So now this track doesn't have panning. The group track does. If I add another audio track, so this isn't being sent to the group, now we could pan. So make sure that it's not being sent accidentally to a mono group, because that could cause exactly what you're doing. So this track that's being routed to mono group, I don't see panning control. The group track I can. So the group track I can, and because that's being routed to the stereo out, the new audio track I can, because that's not being sent to the group. But if I changed the routing for this to the group, then the panning control disappears. So let me know if that is what you saw. All right, so we see Soren just says, my ears, it still seems to be more of a lisping sound when it's in stereo. So It could be that, it's not folding it down, so that could be what it's actually at. You may have to adjust based on the stereo as opposed to dialing it in via mono and then turning on stereo. So, okay, reading through comments. All right, so we see Greg in Midi / macro select tools. Please demonstrate the key commands that set up the macro CCLS. So if you want to assign a key command to that function, what you would do is come over here to your edit menu to key commands. And if you're in 13, we could just assign a key command for the macro right here. If you are in 12 and earlier, if we come over to, you'll see any macro that you created will show up in directly here, and then you could assign a key command for the macro right there. So you could assign a key command to any macro that you want. All right, so we see Rodriguez just says, wow, thanks a lot. That's exactly what I do. I see my error. I'll correct it. Yeah, so if we take this, let's say I add it to a stereo group channel just to show this, and we make this stereo. Now when I assign the track to group 2, then we could pan because it's sending it to a stereo source. All right, so we see there's more questions. I think I reached the end of questions. We'll see if there's any more questions that kind of sneak in. If not, we'll wrap up just a little bit early. Thanks to everyone for all of the wonderful questions. And I know there's usually about a 20 to 30 second delay from when I talk to when you guys all see it. But thanks for all the wonderful questions. I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. And if you, haven't hit the like button, make sure you do that and subscribe to the channel. All right, so we see from Kevin Mehmed, will Helix native for Windows be added to the Steinberg download assistant of powerful programs? So I don't think so. Just, the Line 6 doesn't sell Steinberg products. Steinberg doesn't sell Line 6 products. We're in the same parent company, but, we do maintain independent branding between Bosendorfer, Line 6, Ampeg, Cordoba, Guild, Steinberg, Bosendorfer, and Nexo. They're all Yamaha brands. So, but that, each has their own revenue stream and sometimes they're not shared. So I wouldn't anticipate, the Line 6 Helix being part of the Steinberg download assistant. All right. All right, Rodriguez asks, what is the frequency of your live shows? It's very instructive, and I wouldn't want to miss it again. So we usually do Tuesdays and Fridays. So I think I was just counting up for a report. I think it's like our 371st live stream since COVID started. So we usually do 2 a week, unless I'm traveling. With COVID, since then I haven't been traveling as much, so I just kind of focused on doing live streams. So, but usually twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and then you could watch them afterwards. So If you go to the YouTube channel, you can go back and watch all 371. I think it's 2,040 hours of live streams like this that are available to watch. And as Michael Pierce says, it's a fabulous website full of past questions as well. So yeah, go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan again for having that. And Michael Pierce also says, and a Discord. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher from Royal Wooten Bassett. I understand if you can't make it live all the time. We appreciate you being here. It's always great to have you on. All right, we'll wait just another minute or two, see if there's any other questions that sneak in. All right, so with that, it looks like we've answered all the questions today. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Again, if you want to send questions in advance, send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de, and we'll be more than happy to get those. Also, we want, just want to express gratitude for everyone that took time out of your, I know everyone's schedule is busy. So whether you spent part of your morning, evening, afternoon with us, I appreciate everyone taking the time to learn more about the various Steinberg products. And, I want to thank again Jan and Jazz Dude, Agent K for all of their work and efforts. And just, I feel lucky to be part of such a wonderful community, and look forward to helping out more and answering further questions. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy. And then we will see everyone back on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you on Friday. Goodbye.